Today I'm going to talk about the dream of murder that A Course in Miracles describes. And I'm going to start off by saying that you cannot practice the Course without looking at sin, guilt, and fear, and the expression of those ideas in the dream or nightmare. Everything you think you see arose from the idea of murder, made real and given living form. The foundation of the apparent world we live in, its foundation is the carcass of God, because the Course teaches that the world arose from the idea that we murdered God. We wanted to leave heaven. We didn't want to be under, his thumb anymore in love and heaven and peace. And so we wanted individuality. When we believe we turn our back on him to accept the ego thought system, um, we believe we murdered him. Now, that's impossible and silly and ridiculous, but that is the underlying thought of this world, of the idea of sin, the idea of guilt, the idea of fear. Those things are only have meaning in the context of the belief that we killed God. So there are no exceptions. Every single thing you think you see arose from the idea of murder. There's nothing lovely, good, kind, or precious in a dream world of illusion, in any illusion. When he says in the Course that nothing you believe is precious will be lost, it's kind of an acknowledgement that you don't really believe anything is precious, but your own individuality and preserving what you made of yourself. So I think that I see that statement as kind of on the journey, the recognition that there's nothing precious that comes from the idea of murder. Nothing precious comes from the idea of sin, guilt, and fear. Nothing can be loved in what was made to be love's opposite, what was made to be a block to the awareness of love's presence. So the world lingers on because of how difficult it is for a student to see without flinching and only with Jesus how ugly form is. So this is it. This is why students say the Course is difficult. This is what Ken Wapnick focused on for his life and made his life's work. And this is what other teachers do not seem to focus on, what Ken did pay attention to. Every relationship is a special hate relationship. There are no exceptions. Jesus makes no exceptions in his book. Intellectually, it's very easy to see what he's saying. In practice, we're driven beyond reason to preserve ideas of love in the dream. I love my spouse, my baby, my parents, my best friend, my job. Letting go of the idea that love can exist in a world that is literally love's opposite is not something the mind wants to do. All of our defenses are set up to protect and preserve the world we think we made, which is to say they're set up to protect and preserve the self that we think we made. So even the clinging to the idea of love here is not about the other, the object, the symbol that we think we love. It's always about ourselves. This world is the idea of selfishness and self-preservation and opportunism. Just to, all we really care about is ourselves. And that's not a pretty thing. It's not a nice thing to look at. And so we try to make believe that, oh, there's something positive in the ego, there's something positive in me, despite the fact that it's a dream of murder. Somehow we'll set ourselves apart, or we'll set something outside of ourselves apart from that. Even course groups, nothing is set outside. Your relationship with your teacher, with your spouse, with anything and anyone in the world, any event, it all arose within the context of a dream of murder. So when we set things apart from that and say, Jesus, I'll look at all this other stuff with you, like how much I hate that guy or that woman, but I won't look at this over here as being part of hatred and murder. That is to preserve ourselves. It's the only reason we do. The only reason we set anything apart again, is never about the symbol or the form itself. It is always about preserving the self we think we made, the self that we luxuriate in, and we just don't want to let go of it. And we will cling to our judgments and we'll cling to our grievances in order to maintain what we think we made, regardless of how painful it becomes. And it can become excruciatingly painful. And if it's not painful for us, we have to witness pain. It's something outside of ourselves. So there's truly no way to get fully comfortable here except in total delusion or oblivion. So the whole thing is funny from one perspective because nothing happened. God wasn't murdered. The dream of murder is nothing and nowhere. It's in a mind that came here to hate a little while. But we don't really dwell in that perspective that it's funny or there would be no world. So we can be reached by the Course and still choose the same mistake over and over again. And I think Jesus anticipates that and talks quite a bit about that in the Course. So all of this is not as grim as it sounds. The goal, of course, is to look with Jesus, not to change any of it, and not to pretend that the illusion is nice and sprung from a nice idea. Form only sprung from a dream of murder. So we don't try to change anything because it can't be changed. There is nothing grimmer than believing you can change an illusion. So everything I'm talking about right now is not grim because the grim part is believing you can change an illusion. All you'll really do if you try to change the illusion is accept that death is real and maybe accept a compromise approach. Ultimately, the pain of self-betrayal will reach awareness because it always does. In some way, in some form, we can't win here. This world is a symbol of loss, of sacrifice. There is no way to win. The only thing we can do on our path is to take the hand of Jesus or the Holy Spirit and look upon what we made with them so that we can see it for what it is. So we can't do that unless we're first willing to take off the original blinder that would see value here, value in non-duality. Only with Jesus or the Holy Spirit can we see there is no value in non-duality. Every corner is hatred. It's 100% hatred all of the time. And there are no exceptions. We want to create those exceptions because we want to believe something about ourselves. And underneath what we want to believe about ourselves in the world, oh, I'm good and kind and whatever, is we want to believe we're a body. We want to believe the dream's real. We don't want to believe the Course. Our goal is to have a better dream. And that is true for every single person that you can meet or ever talk about or think about. And that is something that can be recognized holding Jesus's hand. We can look on that to see how our bodies and all the other bodies in the world constantly try to formulate a better dream. It's silly not to from the perspective of the world. It doesn't make any sense not to try to have a better dream. So if you think that you're being kind and good in the way you're relating to the others, you're wrong. Being a part of the dream world of illusion, there is only the expression of fear, pain, and guilt around here. No matter how much you think you're concealing that, efforts to keep the guilt from resting on you can mimic or disguise themselves as kindness. And maybe you could even get the whole world to agree with you on that. But you know if you're experiencing an out-of-time reflection of truth. It's the experience and not the form of the dream that is the reflection of love. Never believe there's a reflection of love outside of you or in form of any kind. It does not come in what you think, say, or do. It is your experience in which, and in that interval, out of time interval, when you no longer are invested in what you think, say, or do. That doesn't even make what you think, say, or do a reflection of love. It just means you've lost your investment completely. See, you can never know the whole of the picture. And so in that moment, you can say, in a moment when you experience an out of time interval of the reflection of love, and that memory stays with you, that the most loving expression came through you. But you can't judge that. Nobody can judge that. So if you believe that there is a reflection of love outside of you in form of any kind, that will trip you up and bind your hands and feet, and you will feel lost in the dream of judgment until you choose again. Because see how you can't escape judgment. The only way to escape judgment is to join with Jesus and look upon it with him and be elevated above the battleground and experience yourself differently, time differently, and lose all investment in the dream. Everything else is a dream of judgment. And we must judge because there is no alternative. As long as there appears to be a world, there's judgment and grievances. So don't believe anyone who tells you that you no longer need to look at the forms of sin, guilt, and fear. It is literally all there is to see, either with your ego or with Jesus. That is what perception is. So don't waste time here in the Garden of Agony and Death listening to anyone who talks to you about love and goodness and kindness and compassion and those kinds of things. That is not the course way. We don't know what they are. It is a block to the awareness of love's presence to believe we know what love is. So this nightmare won't change, but we can choose to change our mind about it, and we can choose the right teacher. So there are really two responses, laughing or weeping. We only think there's a middle ground where we can, quote, accept compromise and carve out a space of hell and call it acceptable to us. So that's just part of a broader illusion, and it's not something to be condemned. We just want something more. You can't really jump from hungry dogs of fear in a nightmare to gentle laughter and call it a day. If there still seems to be a world and there still seems to be a little self, those dogs are alive and well and hell is real until we choose again. So every moment we're faced with the exact same thing. We look at what we made, okay? We first have to look at the fact that we believe in good and bad, and then kind of move past that to understand there's nothing valuable. It's all bad. And then we look upon that with Jesus, not to berate ourselves for participating in it or hate anyone, hate ourselves, or to make ourselves feel worse, but to look upon it with Jesus is to see it for the nothingness that it is, that it has no power. And then we will ultimately see there is only good, and everything else was our own nightmare. So none of this has anything to do with form. Nothing I'm talking about has anything to do with form. You can go ahead and criticize the others or try to help the others. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Nothing is happening or will happen. The block to the awareness of love's presence is nothing and nowhere. Do whatever you're going to do. Say whatever you're going to say. Think whatever you're going to think. Just look upon all of that with Jesus and see that it doesn't mean anything. We wanted it to mean something because we wanted to mean something. And we won't experience the truth of what we really are until we're willing to do exactly what Jesus says. So, safe travels on your journey, and may your world be gently lit by miracles. Thank you for listening.